Hindu mythology. Creation, preservation, and destruction were at the core of Hindu mythology in a four-cycle process called the Yugas. The three principal deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, were embodied in a trinity. Brahma was the supreme creator, born from a golden egg, and created humanity and every living thing on Earth. Over time, he was demoted to the role of secondary creator and overshadowed by Vishnu and Shiva. Vishnu became one of the most revered deities, who maintained the cosmic order and intervened whenever there was imbalance or chaos in the world. Believed to have incarnated multiple times in different forms, Vishnu is also known as Rama and Krishna, who restores righteousness and protects the world. On the other hand, Shiva is known as the destroyer and transformer. He is often depicted meditating in the Himalayas or dancing the cosmic dance of creation and destruction. Shiva represents the cyclical nature of existence, where death is not an end, but a transition to rebirth and renewal. Slavic mythology. At the center of Slavic mythology is the god Perun. The most powerful deity, he is the reigning god of the heavens and the god of thunder, lightning, and storms. Perun was a powerful and fierce warrior who protected the people from evil forces. Veles, the god of the underworld, is often said to be the second most crucial god in Slavic mythology and is depicted as the mythical enemy of Perun. He is known for trickery and mischief. The myth itself is the story of Perun chasing a serpent, Veles, who manages to trick him and escapes while transforming into various animals. The belief is that Perun decided not to kill Veles, but to send him to the world of the dead, where he truly belongs. Then there is Mirena, the Slavic goddess of winter, death, witchcraft, and nightmares. She appears mostly as a pale and haunting figure and is associated with cold and desolation. She is often depicted alongside an ogress called Baba Yaga, who is a witch that rides on brooms and mortars and is known to steal, cook, and eat her victims, usually children. Yoruba mythology. The Yoruba people believed in the presence of the Supreme Being and many other minor gods known as orishas. The exact number of the orisha is not known, but they are in the hundreds and are sent out by the Supreme God to help humanity succeed on Earth and teach them spirituality. The creation myth of Yoruba tells the story of how a young Orisha named Obatala went to the supreme god, Olorun, to ask for permission to create dry land where all sorts of creatures could inhabit. He was granted permission and given a list of needed items to get started. Amongst these items were a long gold chain, long enough to reach Earth from heaven, a shell full of sand, and a chicken. From above, he poured the sand and released the hen, who began to scatter the sand everywhere, forming dry land. Bigger piles became hills, and smaller piles became valleys. After a while, he became bored with just the dry land and decided to create people who looked like him. During a moment of drunken weakness, Obatala formed many imperfect figures and breathed life into them. When he realized what he had done, he swore never to drink again, and vowed to take care of those deformed, earning him the title Protector of the Deformed. Abrahamic Mythology. Abrahamic mythology refers to the religious narratives and beliefs of the three major monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Abraham is the heart of this mythology, a pivotal figure revered as the patriarch and ancestor of these faiths. In the Abrahamic tradition, Abraham is depicted as a righteous and faithful servant of God who entered into a covenant with the divine. According to the myths, God promised Abraham numerous descendants and a land of inheritance. These narratives' central themes are Abraham's unwavering faith and obedience to God's commands. One of the most significant stories in Abrahamic mythology is the binding of Isaac, known as the Akedah in Judaism. God tests Abraham's devotion by commanding him to sacrifice his son Isaac. At the last moment, an angel intervenes, sparing Isaac's life and affirming Abraham's faith. In Judaism, Abraham is revered as the first patriarch and the founder of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. His descendants, through his son Isaac and grandson Jacob, became the 12 tribes of Israel. In Christianity, Abraham is respected as a model of faith and obedience, and his covenant with God is seen as a precursor to the new covenant established through Jesus Christ. In Islam, Abraham, known as Ibrahim, is regarded as a prophet and messenger of God, revered for his monotheistic beliefs and submission to divine will. The story of Abraham is prominently featured in the Quran, and Muslims believe that he played a crucial role in the construction of the Kaaba in Mecca. Mayan Mythology. The core belief was that humans were put on Earth to nourish the gods, and for the gods to continue showering blessings, they sacrificed humans and animals in massive rituals as offerings to gods. They had a god for every event, and therefore had rituals for many things. There was a ritual for prosperity, one for healing, another for fertility and rain, and so on. Male children between the ages of 3 to 11 were thrown alive into sacred sinkhole caves, known as cenotes, as a petition to the gods for rain and fertile fields. Mayans believed the world was created through a series of trials and experiments. The first round of experiments was a race made out of clay, but they melted into the water. The next race of people, made of wood, were dull, spiritless, and easily destroyed by fire. And then finally, the gods mixed yellow and white maize flour for the third attempt and made the first fathers from the dough. There was the belief in three cosmos consisting of a 13-layered heaven stacked above the earth. The earth, sandwiched between heaven and a 9-layered realm called Xibalba, rested on the back of a turtle floating in the ocean. These realms are interconnected through a giant tree, whose roots reach into the underworld and its branches stretch to the heavens. The gods and the souls of the dead traveled between worlds along this tree. Sumerian Mythology. Sumerian mythology centered around a pantheon of gods and goddesses who resided in heaven but still coexisted amongst humans. The gods in the pantheon were divided into various groups according to their powers and responsibilities. The pantheon consisted of the 7 gods that determined destinies, with An being the most powerful god of heaven, Enlil, the storm and wind god, Enki, the water god, Ninhursag, the goddess of fertility and earth, Nanasin, the god of the moon, and Utu, the god of justice and the sun. Each Sumerian city was guarded by its god, and though humans and gods lived together, the humans were merely servants who were created to bear the load of labor for the gods. The gods had human-like qualities, and aside from death, they partied, got drunk, married, and had children. Sumerians believed that heaven was exclusively reserved for the gods, and upon dying, mortal spirits, regardless of whether they were good or bad, would go to Kur, a dark cave beneath the earth, where the only food was dry dust. Kur was said to be ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal and her husband Nergal, the god of death. Inuit Mythology. Central to this is the key belief that everything on Earth has a life force. According to the Inuit people, every human being has an Inuit, or person, and so does every animal and rock. In this way, animals are simply different types of people. So basically, if an animal is killed, quite literally, murder has been committed. Therefore, to stop the gods from anger, rituals and proper burial rites were followed strictly, and if done wrongly, the animal would become a vengeful and angry spirit that would cause havoc for the tribe. If an Inuit hunter kills a polar bear, it is important to hang its skin up for several days, while the severed head must be placed in the direction of the body. They believed that this would aid its reincarnation into another human or animal. The closest thing to a god for them was Sedna, the sea goddess. She was initially the daughter of a chief and the most beautiful woman in the tribe, with long dark hair. Her father, like all chiefs, tried to marry her off to the highest bidders from other tribes, but she refused and, in protest, got married to a dog. In outrage, the father forced her onto his boat, paddled out into the sea, and threw her overboard. She desperately attempted to climb back on board, but he cut off her fingers, and the severed digits became the first seals. Sedna drowned and transformed into a vengeful spirit, becoming the guardian of marine life, many of whom enjoyed nesting in her long hair. Korean Mythology. Korean mythology combines Korean shamanism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and various local myths. Needless to say, Korean mythology can be very fluid and consists of a pantheon of gods who influenced all human affairs. Sanjae is the king of gods and the heavenly emperor, and through him, many humans became gods. Miryuk is the major creator god among the Korean gods, and he created the world, but when angered, caused much of the world's suffering. Seokya, a trickster god who is involved in the Korean creation myth and through deceit becomes the first ruler of the world. In Korean mythology, humans can become gods, and the kings who rule excellently are transformed into gods after death. Hwanang's son Dangan ruled the human world for a long period and later became a mountain god. The underlying logic is that the protagonists of these myths were originally gods or the offspring of gods, so they transform back into gods or return to the heavenly world when their human lives end. Roman mythology. The main gods and goddesses in Roman culture were Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. Jupiter was a sky god who oversaw all aspects of life and concentrated on protecting the Roman state. Juno was Jupiter's wife and sister who kept a particularly watchful eye over women and all aspects of their lives. Minerva was the goddess of wisdom and craft who watched over schoolchildren and craftspeople. According to Roman mythology, the gods themselves had a hand in founding the city of Rome itself. Mars, god of war, and a Vestal virgin named Rhea Silvia were the parents of twin boys Romulus and Remus. Vestal virgins were not permitted to marry or bear children, but were instead to devote their lives to serving Vesta, goddess of the hearth. King Amulius ordered that the twins be thrown into the Tiber River as a punishment to Rhea Silvia for betraying her vow of celibacy. The boys were rescued from the river by a mother wolf, who raised them until a local couple adopted them. They grew up and became important members of the community, dethroning the king and worked together to establish a new city. Romulus killed his brother Remus and named the city Rome after himself. The people of Rome built temples and observed rituals to honor and celebrate their gods. Any favorable or unfavorable circumstances in Roman life was attributed to the mood of a certain god, so people would make offerings to the gods in thanks or in an attempt to appease their tempers.